Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Steve Green, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Donald Trump who listens. I'm here, of course, with Scott Ott and Bill Whittle, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the proudly paying members at BillWhittle.com. Gents, it was 4 weeks ago this very day that I reported to you that Donald Trump was down in every single battleground state except for Florida, and some of those states down by double digits. But I also told you that it wasn't too late for him to turn this thing around. I said to you then that all Trump needs to do is to start listening for once and start running a more professional and a more traditional campaign. That what worked in the primaries doesn't work in the general election. Well, guess what? Trump has done just that, and his poll numbers may have turned the corner. A month ago, Hillary Clinton was up by almost 7, and now her lead has slipped to less than 2.5. That's according to the averages at Real Clear Politics. Now, I'm not claiming credit for this, believe me. But one day after we taped that segment, Trump hired GOP insider, strategist, and pollster Kellyanne Conway to run his campaign, and her fingerprints are all over this thing. He apparently listens to her, keeping his mouth shut when he shouldn't say anything, saying dignified things when he does need to speak, and he's finally buying some TV ads in those very same battleground states. And for me, the killer moment was Monday morning, this week on Fox News. Trump was asked about Hillary's health trouble, and instead of pouncing like he might have during the primary with the insults and whatever, he just said, "I hope she gets well, gets back on the trail, and we'll see her at the debate." Perfect. I mean, that was pitch perfect. Yeah. And then, Scott, I know you don't like Trump, but don't you have to admit that he's starting to look, well, just like Bill said, presidential?
Well, first of all, you've just picked a scab for me, brother, because you don't like Trump is what I read all the time in the comments when people see my videos. I'm like, what is you don't like Trump? I've spent hours enunciating what it is I opposed about his candidacy for the presidency, and it all boils down to you just don't like him.
You just don't like him. Yeah.
So I will say, I heard a clip this morning on the radio of him speaking at this rally in Asheville that happened this week. And it was surprising. It is the longest single clip that I've heard of Donald Trump in which I heard nothing that I could disagree with. And so I think you're right. I really do think that he is following the old maxim that when your opponent is digging her own grave, stand back and hand her a shovel and just let her do it, because, and I don't mean literally, this is a figure of speech, but I think that apparently Donald Trump has finally found somebody in whom he can place his trust as far as advice goes, even though he's previously said that he has such a big brain he doesn't need to listen to anybody else's advice. It sounds like he's finally doing it and making some smart moves. If he continues to do this and really breaking out of that idea of The Apprentice where I am the show and realizing that actually, no, right now Hillary is the show and it's an awful show and people don't like it and people will do anything to change the channel.
Oh yeah, well, it's the train wreck scene from Wrongfully Accused, not even the one from The Fugitive. Well, Scott, did you happen to see Trump's speech at the Black Church a couple of weeks ago? I think that might have been maybe not a game changer, but certainly a direction changer.
No, I didn't get to see that whole thing, and I will tell you that all of my opinion of Donald Trump is not shaped by what I see in the media. I actually don't watch CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, except here and there you see clips on social media or whatever. So my evaluation of him is based entirely on my observation of him in debate settings and giving speeches at rallies and various policy proposals. So in the past, he's said, I think, some rather disturbing things that seem to reflect his thinking at the moment. And now it seems like somebody's finally got a hold of him and said, hey, brother, you're running for president of the United States. Why not? It's the old football thing where the guy's doing an end zone dance and the referee comes over and says, hey, why don't you act like you've been here before and you plan to come back?
Wow, what a great line. I never heard that before.
Yeah, I love that. Well, okay, let me give you one more follow-up then. I've been giving a lot of the credit to his hire of Kellyanne, but now that I think about it, you did a segment on the Veep picks, and do you think maybe he's giving a good ear to Mike Pence too?
I hope he is. I mean, at the very least, he's doing a good job. His smartest move after picking Mike Pence, I think, was letting Pence be himself. And as far as I can tell, the Trump campaign is exerting no influence over where Mike Pence goes or what he says or does. And that was the huge mistake that the McCain campaign made when they tried to manage Sarah Palin all the time. So they took this, this spectacular, tropical bird who was well known for the sound she made and the beauty of her tail feathers, and they put her inside a cage and said, okay, let's see if people like you now. And they didn't. And I think if he continues to let Mike Pence go out there and be this dignified, executive-looking guy, every time Mike Pence opens his mouth, he says Donald Trump is a good executive, not in the words he speaks, but in his demeanor and in who he is.
All right. Well, Bill's got to be going nuts here because I've been giving you all the airtime here. All right, Bill.
And that's all the time we have for today.
So long, and thanks for playing. Bill, the flip side to this is that Trump has a kind of a low bar to clear, and I don't mean judging him by his past behavior. I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, Hillary Clinton, she's just a criminal, and even worse, she's a terrible candidate. There's been weeks of the drip, drip, drip of her email scandal, and the polls, they haven't even started to show what Americans think about her calling millions of us deplorables, or her collapse from pneumonia on the 9/11 anniversary, and plus all the lies surrounding her health that are really still going on. I mean, they've settled on pneumonia. I put that in scare quotes, but we still don't know the truth. So is it Hillary's fault, or does Trump deserve a lot of the credit for this turnaround?
Well, when you look at poll numbers, it's both. I did a Nexus report, it's a members-only program we do, and I basically said pretty much the same thing you've said. Even as little as 2-3 weeks ago, it was a completely different picture.
Yeah.
And the reason it looks so different now is because Donald Trump's pan has been going up and Hillary Clinton's pan has been coming down. And those two things are independent. So my right angle segment this week is about Hillary's falling stock and her just inability to tell the truth under any circumstances. So let me just deal with Trump in this one. The first thing that's interesting about this is that Donald Trump is showing a sign of character and especially intelligence. And that is he's changing his mind and he's changing his strategy based on real-time events. That's what I admired most about George Bush. It took him a while, but George Bush, confronted with the fact that the Iraq occupation was just not working, was given a series of options: go big or go home. And George Bush said to himself, essentially, we've been making mistakes. Let's try something different. Let's give it to the people that really know what they're talking about, and let's take a risk and double down with a new strategy. I thought that was very admirable, and clearly Trump is doing that. The trip to Mexico was inspired. It's just inspired theater. It was his number one weakness, was he was such a racist and hated Mexicans. And then he goes down and meets the prospective president of Mexico, and they shake hands, have a lovely time, substantive talks, brilliant. Going to the black church, Steve, was even more brilliant. And I said at the end of the 2012 race, if Mitt Romney had done that one time, he'd be president. And so what is actually happening here is that Donald Trump is stealing the ground that Obama was on. Donald Trump is the guy who looks like he's reaching out to all these different communities and saying, hey, we got common problems. We need to fix this. And Hillary is now the one calling half of the country deplorable. So there's that lovely piece of news. But I think the final thing that is most important is this. Donald Trump is a bright guy. You don't get to be a billionaire by being an idiot. You can be a politician and be an idiot, but you can't be that kind of money and be an idiot. And the thing I don't think I've ever heard anybody point out before is this. Up until this presidential campaign, in fact, really almost up until the general part of the election, Donald Trump has been trained by himself and been trained by his environment for a specific goal, which is to succeed. In other words, Donald Trump has succeeded by being flamboyant, by being abrasive, and by being obnoxious. There are thousands, tens of thousands of multimillionaire real estate developers in this country, and we only know one of them, and that name is Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump has used his abrasiveness and the sort of irascibility and the shoot-from-the-hip kind of outrageousness to become a very big leading player. Got him a TV show, and the TV show reinforced that. I know how these producers work on reality TV. Donald Trump might say something more or less reasonable, right? He might see it in his own way, but it's more or less reasonable. And the producers will say, no, people want to hear you get really outrageous. Yell and scream at the guy and then call him an idiot. That's what people want to watch. And so Trump, when I say he was trained into that, I'm not trying to suggest that he's an idiot. On the contrary, I'm trying to suggest that he's a guy who's smart enough to know that for the business transactions as a real estate developer and for the TV show, it paid to be outrageous. and it paid to be outrageous during the primaries. You don't have to like it, but he is the nominee. No one thought he'd get that far. I certainly didn't. I think Donald Trump has now had people telling him, you're going to lose this, and you're going to lose this thing huge if you don't start learning to be different than what you've done before. And everything that worked for you before, you have to put away, and you have to try these other things now. To me, that's a sign of intelligence, and more than that, it's a sign of discipline. And of all the things that I feared most about Donald Trump was his apparent utter lack of discipline. And for him to be, I don't want to say behaving himself, because I don't think he's a child. For him to be able to consistently understand that this is a new role that he has to play, that it's a new strategy and a new method to get to where he wants to go, I think it's extremely encouraging.
And Steve, may I add that
of course.
There's a fascinating phenomenon in human nature that once a person has made a decision, for example, to buy a new car, everything that happens after that will reinforce that decision. The part of your brain that tries to say, hey, did I make the right decision? That's gone, because now you start to justify the decision you've already made. And so, you bought a smoking hot sports car and you go home and you tell your wife about the safety features. And, you're just trying to reinforce the whole thing. And so and I'm sure Trump understands this. What Donald Trump must understand is that all of those people who are already enthusiastically supporting him, they're no longer in a decision-making mode. No matter what he does from here on out,
they're with him.
They're locked and loaded. He doesn't have to worry about losing them. All he can do is gain new supporters if he changes his approach, because the other ones are already in the bank.
All right.
What Steve, just because it's very important, Steve, Scott got it exactly right. Sometimes you call that pot committed. When you've got all of your chips on the table, you have to play the hand. You don't get to fold. You're out of the game if you don't win the hand. And people get target locked and they don't change. If Hillary Clinton had been honest about her, openly honest about her serious illness, which is not pneumonia, she would have generated sympathy.
Yeah.
But she's so target locked on this constant idea of keeping the truth under wraps and not letting anything out. Trump is showing a lot more character than she is by being willing to change his persona and change the game.
Bill, let me get back to you for just a sec. You used two words that made me think of something that was in the news on Monday. Those words were outrageous and discipline. Trump's latest outrageous proposal, and this is only outrageous within the very narrow strictures of Washington, D.C. thinking, is to have no moderators at his debates with Hillary Clinton. Just a free-form discussion between two people who want to be leader of the free world. And would that be you'd think that would be a smart move, because there would be, any Candy Crowley moments throwing the debate to Clinton, or would it be a risk that he wouldn't show that discipline on this huge national stage?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I heard that story too, and I thought, what a catastrophe. But
I think
because Trump would just roll over like a steamroller. But now that you bring it up, Steve, I suspect that the reason that he made that offer was he wanted to astound the American people with just how reserved and disciplined and dignified he could be. I think people thought, man, if it's just Hillary and Donald together, he's just going to do the Trump thing, but I suspect that he called for it because there's no better way for him to undo the damage that he's done to his reputation than to show the American people that he's calm and dignified. Look, the thing you mentioned about Hillary being sick, that in a nutshell is exactly precisely what he needs to do. You don't jump on her when she's down. You say, hey, I hope she gets better fast. You don't make any allegations about her being sicker than she is, because she is sicker than she is. You just take that dignified, good sport attitude. I hope she gets better soon, and I'm looking forward to seeing her out there on the field.
I think that have you ever heard of Tim Ferriss? He's written The 4-Hour Workweek and a bunch of other books like that. Anyway, he's kind of a motivational guy, and he entered a competition, some sort of wrestling competition. He had no previous experience in this sport, but what he did was he studied the rules of the sport. And he figured out that you can win this thing if you can get your opponent to step outside of the ring, I think 3 times during the course of the bout. And so he actually won this tournament somewhere down in South America that he entered with no previous experience, because all he did the whole time was find ways to bump his opponent outside of the ring. So he couldn't really grapple with him because he doesn't know what he's doing. But he knocked him out of the ring. I think that Donald Trump would thrive in an atmosphere where there were no moderators, because there's nobody there to rescue Hillary. And he is like a hockey player on skates, and she can't handle herself on the ice.
And Scott,
Steve, I know you think. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, just to double down on what you were saying, Scott. Hillary Clinton, between her health and how heavily scripted she is, operates in a very, very small ring. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say, I know you're probably worried about losing complete control of the show.
Oh, no, that happened about 6 minutes ago.
And I'm worried about losing control of the whole series. But but truthfully, what's interesting about this is Donald Trump is offering something that neither candidate has offered before, and that's magnanimity and class
True.
and a sense of decency. When they're the number one most unpopular person in the history of the country running against the second most unpopular person running in the history of the country, when you do something statesmanlike and sportsmanlike, like I wish her the very best, I hope she recovers soon, makes a full recovery, I'm looking forward to meeting her in the debates, we'll settle this the way it's supposed to be settled, you're providing something that neither team has had before. Right. You've got somebody with some dignity and some class and something to vote for instead of against.
Yeah, some humanity, which has been sadly lacking in this campaign. All right, folks. Yeah, I did lose control of this, but that's okay. I've got a theory. Trump didn't turn his campaign around last month after looking at the polls and thinking, "Oh crap, what if I lose?" He turned the campaign around after looking at Hillary and thinking, "Oh crap, what if I win?" It's a big job. It's a big responsibility. There's none bigger in the world. It's leading the free world, and if it took Trump until now to grow into the role, well, better late than after November 8th. And that is the right angle on the Donald Trump who listens, courtesy of the paying members at BillWhittle.com. They keep us on the air, and you can become a part of that if you just click on over. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.